following the high-stakes meeting between President Trump and Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping, reports say China has agreed to delay its rare earth export curbs by a year. So far, the agreement on both sides is verbal and no trade deal has been inked. Joining us to unpack the economic angles of this meeting is Christopher Balding. He was a professor at Peking University's HSBC School of Business until 2018, when he was fired for pushing back against censorship. Now he's the founder of Sifter, a smart social media platform, and New Kite Data Labs, a think tank focused on China, data technology, and the economy. Christopher Balding, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me, Tiffany.
Now, of course, President Trump and China Xi had that high-stakes meeting in South Korea. Trump rating it 12 out of 10 for his meeting with China Xi. It seems so far, though, there's a lot covered depending on, Western media or China's coverage of this event, very different topics. But it seems like right now it's mostly verbal. There's no trade deal yet.
This seems to what I would call it mostly a placeholder agreement. There were a number of things that were delayed for 1 year by both sides. So maybe there's hope that there will be a larger agreement. It seems much more, however, that this is a placeholder agreement designed to, let's say, delay the ratcheting up of further hostilities than to actually solve anything.
On the point of this 1 year delay, of course, headlines are noting on China's side, the rare earth export controls will be delayed about a year. And then, of course, on the U.S. side is tariffs. Also something about chips, NVIDIA's, pretty high-end chips involved as well. But on the rare earth aspect, very quickly, we saw Trump sign a bunch of deals in Asia, one with Malaysia. But Malaysia seems to have just walked back their deal with the United States, saying instead of the raw materials, they're now only going to be sending the refined or processed minerals to the U.S., which is refined and processed by Beijing. So how are you reading all of these moving parts, if you will?
I'm trying to keep up with all the moving parts that are taking place right now. One of the moving parts clearly is rare earths. We saw this week that there's a certain rare earth processor coming online in the United States. There's a deal that was struck between an Australian firm and Malaysia to do processing using no Chinese intellectual property or machines of any kind. So I think one aspect of this is Trump is basically doing the Project Warp Speed, or some have called it the Manhattan Project for rare earths, to basically, break the global Chinese monopoly on rare earths as fast as possible. And part of that, placeholder agreement is what I'm calling it, is when they come back, maybe in 6 months or a year, Trump will look at Xi and say, sorry, we're not scared of rare earths anymore. We can do that ourselves. So I suspect that is one part of the, everybody kind of puts a pause button and says, let's resume fighting in a year.
I want to dig into that because with this 1 year window that we have right now, it seems like kind of a trade truce, right? Continuing delicately, if you will. Of course, the deal hasn't been signed yet, so we don't know if there's any mechanisms in place to ensure that this time China follows through. But what are you watching for in that aspect? What kind of levers would the U.S. have to maybe hold China to account this time?
One of the things that I think is going to be very interesting going forward into the future is basically the oversight of these agreements and how the United States and China react to that. Specifically, as you've noted, with the fentanyl agreement, is the United States, if they don't believe China is actively assisting and cracking down on fentanyl producers, are they going to snap back tariffs on China? To date, China, every time this has come up, they've promised this time we mean it, and within 6 months it doesn't mean anything at all. So when we're talking about how will this play out in the future, what will Trump do if China doesn't uphold? What will Trump do if China doesn't continue shipping rare earths in the interim? So when I talk about placeholder, I think that's what we're talking about. It really doesn't solve anything. It just kind of pushes a lot of those decisions off into the future.
Definitely a lot to watch for here for sure. Christopher Balding, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tiffany.